listening to Chapter 14 of The Guardian of Ailos. Nelson woke to the sound of Sid mumbling. She kept saying the same words over and over again. Calamor Porto. Calamor Porto. But he couldn't understand her. It sounded like the ancient language of the book. Whatever it was. It didn't sound good. He started to panic. Sid, Nelson whispered, leaning over his friend and trying to shake her awake. Sid, come on, wake up. I wish Mina was here, he muttered to himself, as he stood and walked over to the mouth of the cave. A full moon sat high in the sky, shining bright, even behind all of the ash. Rays of its light poked through the clouds. Where are you? He whispered over to the dark forest below. His eyes searched for any sign of her. He hoped to see her coming up the side of the mountain, but instead, he saw fire. Little specks of it flickering in the dark. It multiplied until down where the forest met the mountain, he saw a small army of men carrying torches. Not good, he said. He could feel his heart pounding in his chest. Sid continued to mumble behind him. Come on, Nelson, think. He tried to think of a plan, but the only thing he could think of was running. When he looked back at his friend lying on the ground, he saw the golden locket starting to glow. Nelson decided to check it out. Why would the locket be glowing like that? He had never seen a locket glow without something holding it before. The light continued to grow brighter, pulsing until it illuminated the entire cave. The black walls turned gray in its light. Still, Sid did not wake. Finally, Nelson decided to pick it up. The sensation of being pulled in by a magnet overwhelmed him. As soon as he had it in his hand, he heard a voice. It sounded calm at first, but then it echoed over and over again until it sounded like screaming. Calamor Porto! Calamor Porto! Over and over and over again. Nelson couldn't bear it. He dropped the locket, his ears ringing as he backed away, but the voices didn't stop. The echo only grew louder. He doubled over, clutching his ears, praying it would stop. It didn't. The pain increased until finally he let out a yell. He yelled so hard that his whole body shook. He yelled until he had no breath left. Everything started to spin. Nelson thought for sure he would pass out. He felt nauseous and tired and scared. Tears began falling from his eyes as he curled himself up into a ball on the ground. Calamor Porto. Calamor Porto. When he came to the end of his strength and all he could do was let go, all of a sudden the voices stopped. Breathing heavily, he lifted himself up onto his hands and knees, and as he started to stand, he saw an explosion. At the far end of the forest, just over the horizon of the cave floor, he saw a bright light begin to glow. At the same time, Sid gasped as she came awake. Nelson, she said, trying to catch her breath. He knows we're here, she panted. Mina is lost. We have to go. Back to Ailos. Nelson hurried over to her. What are you saying? She's lost? He refused to believe it. We can't just leave her, Sid. I know, but she told me to. She said we have to close the gate for good. If Ailos finds us, he'll have all 3 of the stones. He'll be unstoppable. No, Nelson stood up, Dekar's locket gripped firmly in his hand. There has to be another way. He walked over to the front of the cave. The army had reached the foot of the mountain, and they were starting to climb. Think, think, think. Nelson squatted and held his head in his hands. Sheila. Sheila? Sid asked. Yes, Mina's bird thing. She left her behind to guard the veil. We can ride it and save her. Nelson smiled wide like a mad genius, but Sid had no chance. Nelson had already passed her and was halfway down the hall. "Wait here," he shouted back as he ran. "I'll be right back." Nelson disappeared from sight as he turned the corner. He ran faster than he ever had before. He knew, without a shadow of a doubt, that they would not be able to survive the dragon without Mina. And, as Sid was sure to find out, with the army inching their way closer, Sheila was their best bet of getting out of there. One last turn, and Nelson made his way down the hall and through the veil. Thanks for listening to Chapter 14 of The Guardian of Ailos. As a reminder, we'd love to hear your thoughts, so leave a comment or head over to our Substack and follow us there. And we'll be right back next week with Chapter 15.